Let's talk about people pleasing today. I really want to spend some time talking about it because it really comes up the most around the holidays, where if I know you at all, you are a really good egg. You're the rock, you're the glue, you're the one that holds everything together. You spend an exorbitant amount of time making sure that everyone around you is comfortable all the time. And what that means for you as a person that cares deeply about how other people feel, you have this ability to read a room, to know instinctively what people need, what's going to make them happy, what's going to keep the peace. And so you spend most of your bandwidth mentally thinking about how to maneuver with other people to keep them happy, or at least not mad at you or upset with you or disappointed, or for God forbid, in any way, shape, or form, you never want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. And isn't that a wonderful thing about you? You have this ability to be able to see people and it's not that there's anything inherently wrong with that. It's that it becomes a problem for you whenever you spend more energy making other people feel seen, heard, accepted, comfortable. And you do that at the expense of yourself. And you end up, while everybody else around you is feeling comfortable, satisfied, okay, you are playing a mental gymnastics game in your head, and you're the only one suffering. You're the one that feels like, don't they see how much I care for them? Like I go out of my way and I make these special meals at the holiday time that I know everybody will love, and I have everybody's stuff just right. And I make sure that, everybody's comfortable and okay, and but nobody's really doing that for me. You probably feel that your relationships are really unbalanced in this way, where you're always looking out for everybody else, you're always making sure everybody feels comfortable. When it comes to you, nobody's doing that kind of work for you. So what's the price that you pay? How do you know when you're people pleasing it goes beyond just love and care for people? Like I said, when it's at the expense of yourself and you end up at your worst, pleasing, taking on everything else, saying yes when you mean no, taking on more than you want to, biting your tongue, sitting on your truth, not speaking how you really feel, and you end up feeling really resentful, overwhelmed, unheard, unseen, exhausted. And then when you get to those feelings, you want to escape those feelings. And by the time you get to that, then you end up sometimes exploding on other people. And you're like, holy hell, man, I didn't realize you had this in you. I thought you were the sweetest thing. And you're like, well, you never know, a pleaser, a people pleaser, it can be like a ticking time bomb. And maybe you have a couple of cocktails or you feel a little loosey goosey, and then all of a sudden all that rage or resentment comes out. Or maybe you're pleasing everybody else all the time, and when it comes time for those feelings of resentment or rage or overwhelm, you end up locking yourself up in your bedroom and disappearing for as long as you possibly can, just to kind of like get some kind of reprieve. And the problem with this behavior of retreating or shopping online or drinking or medicating is that the whole reason that you're doing that in the first place, and you get to that place of overwhelm, is because this lie in your heart that you believe that it's your job to make everybody feel okay, that it's your job somehow to make everybody feel comfortable all the time. Where did you get that message? Think back for a minute to when you were younger, and maybe your family, everybody did the best they could. You grew up and as best as everybody could do, right? But you can think back and you remember there was a lot of um, challenges in your family of origin. Maybe mom and dad didn't get along a lot, and there was a lot of friction in that household. And you found yourself as a kid playing the peacemaker or the therapist, or making sure that mom felt okay. Or maybe you had a depressed parent and you did everything you could to go out of the way to make sure that that parent felt comfortable, didn't get overwhelmed. So you took on more than you wanted to. You wanted to have your own life growing up, but you found that your role in the family, you ended up playing that that peacekeeper, the pleaser. Maybe you had a controlling parent. And on the other end of a people pleaser is a controlling person dynamic where, hey, your job is to make me feel wonderful. And when you're not behaving and I don't feel wonderful, it's your fault. And what I'm describing here is a recipe for codependent relationships, dysfunctional relationships. Those relationships are very one sided, where you're pouring all your energy and effort in making sure people feel comfortable and it's not reciprocated. And by the way, how do you feel when you're pretending all the time and pleasing and not speaking your truth and not saying what you really want and what you really think and what you really feel in the name of protecting other people? How does anybody ever really get to know you then? How does anybody ever really get to see or love the real you when you're hiding part of that from everybody else? And the fear might be real. You might be in relationships with people that you're afraid that if you don't please them and you don't keep the peace, their narcissistic ass is going to go off on you or they're going to take their love away. Ultimately, that's what prevents us from stopping that game of pleasing and starting to have more balance in our lives. And believe me, I'm not saying on the pendulum of pleasing, right? You have, I'm just going to please myself. It's all about me, honey, at the end of the day. And I'm going to do whatever I need to do. And I'm the queen of my life. And if and you are the queen of your life and all that's wonderful, but we're benevolent queens. We also serve our kingdom and the people inside, but we do that through leadership, not placating. You as a queen or king of your family, of your domain, are not sent here or made here to be silent and sit and suffer and pretend and put everybody else before your needs. You're a leader in your own life, a leader in your family. And in order for you to lead effectively, you have to ruffle some feathers sometimes. You have to say some things if you're going to lead in your own life and if you're going to lead your family and hold the vision for, your happily even after the kind of life that you want. You have to be willing to make people uncomfortable. How can you practice making people uncomfortable and giving them their feelings and letting them deal? Sometimes if like we can think of the easiest way to think about this is with a child. We want to please our children, right? We want to give them the world. We don't ever want them to be hurting or in pain or not have what they want. We don't want them to be uncomfortable. We don't want them to suffer. So what we do is we self-sacrifice. That's the name of the game is like, well, I'm going to put all my needs on hold. I'm going to do everything I need to do for this child or these children. I'm going to pretend like I don't have any needs and I'm going to become a people pleaser to my children. And then there'll be days that'll come where you're like, especially when you go through life with a child and they have these bouts of independence or these bouts of needing to pull away from you and buck the system and challenge you, but you'll be thinking, well, I've done all these things for you. I've given up my whole life for you. And now you're bucking the system, or now you're making me uncomfortable. I've spent my whole life making you comfortable. And now you're making me uncomfortable. And see how that resentment can start to build. But our job as a parent is to let our children feel uncomfortable sometimes. I wrestle with PMDD, which is like, premenstrual, major depression before. And I have depression anyway. I have depression, I have anxiety, all these things that I'm, always working through and using my tools. But sometimes, especially in perimenopause lately, or when PMDD happens, I'm moody as hell. I'm uncomfortable. I'm not perfect all the time. And even with my daughter, who's now 10, she'll say to me, gosh, are you grumpy? She's like the mood police. She's trying to figure out what's going on. And my only response to her is, honey, I'm fully human, having a human experience. And you're going to notice that when you go through hormonal changes, you're going to have ups and downs and ins and outs. And our only job is to allow ourselves to have these ups and downs and ins and outs and ebbs and flows, but to make sure other people around us don't take it personally. So I'm not going to pretend everything's okay when I'm feeling hormonal and terrible and need naps, but I'm also not going to let you think it's your fault right? So I'm going to communicate to you. I'm going to be real. I'm going to do what I need to do to please myself and also love you at the same time, which is, hey, telling your loved one that behavior that you're doing is making me feel uncomfortable. I don't want to take on this responsibility. No, no, thank you. I wouldn't like to take on the whole holiday myself. No, thank you. I wouldn't like to, take on more than I can. I don't have the bandwidth. You're allowed to shake things up. You're allowed to have another thing is you'd be looked at as a superhero, as a pleaser too, right? Like you can take it on no matter what. It's never too much for you. And you get a real sense of pride out of that sometimes, out of taking on more than you know you should. You get a sense of pride out of that. It fills your ego, it fills your self-esteem, but it's not filling your soul. It's not enabling you, take on all that stuff that you don't want to take on because you don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. Well, yeah, sure, I'll do this whole thing so you don't have to be uncomfortable. Yeah, sure, I'll have that tough conversation with everybody because you don't want to feel uncomfortable. Yeah, sure, I'll bite my tongue and not bring up anything because you want to feel comfortable. And what ends up happening there is that person never learns on their own how to process an uncomfortable feeling because you're protecting them all the time. It's normal for people to feel uncomfortable. It's necessary for people to feel uncomfortable and to learn how to deal with that uncomfortability on their own without you feeling overly responsible for that feeling they're having or feeling like you need to fix that feeling that they're having. This is all codependent behavior. It's not healthy. It's a dysfunctional way of being in love or being loving in a relationship because you think that if you're not this person everybody expects you to be, if you're not the smiling all the time or the happy all the time or the perfect all the time or doing whatever, that somehow means that you're unlovable. Christmas is a great time to remember one person in particular who came to shake shit up. Maybe you know who I'm talking about if you haven't been indoctrinated out of the truth of things. But I'm talking about Christmas time right now, and I'm talking about Jesus. I'm talking about the prophet who came into the world. And you don't have to be a religious person to understand this concept. Just please stay with me, okay? I'm not a religious person by any stretch of the imagination, but I am a very spiritual person. And what I know for sure is that when Jesus came, he came in to shake it up. He was not, now we know him as like the Prince of Peace and the Great Comforter and all these things, but what was not, he was like a rebel. He came in and made people feel extremely uncomfortable just by saying one thing. What did he tell everybody? I'm God and so are you. You're God, I'm God, and you're God. God is within, the kingdom of heaven is within. There is nothing outside of yourself. You're God. And because everybody was like, I can't be God, and neither can you. That's blasphemy. They killed him for it. But he believed in something so much in his personal message and his desire to share knowledge that he had or wisdom that he was willing to die for that because it was that important to him to be able to share that wisdom. Or God came, if you believe in theosis, that God came as a human so that humans can become God. God became human so humans can become God. That's what theosis is. I'm just mentioning this because for me, that is the biggest example I can think of somebody who came to shake shit up and make people feel uncomfortable because he had a word of wisdom, a truth he wanted to share, a brilliant idea that he had, an enlightenment that he got, a sense that he knew. And you have that same wisdom within you. You have brilliant ideas to share. You have amazing ideas that you can impart. You have perspectives that are wise. You see things. You're such an observer. You have such a wonderful ability to see things, but you're gonna have to be willing to ruffle some feathers and to shake some things up to be really seen, to be really heard, to be really valued. The ticket to being loved for your true self is to be your true self. It's to stop pretending. So you have this holiday season right now to just practice stopping pleasing everybody around you and restore the balance. I'm not saying go all the way on the pendulum and just please yourself. I'm saying bring the balance back to the center, the middle way. The Taoists call that the middle way, where I'm pleasing myself as well. I include myself in this equation. Before you say yes to anything, you run it through a filter of your body. You sit with it. Somebody asks you, "Hey, do you want to do that thing for me? Do you want to take care of this for me? Do you want to take on that project? Do you want to, whatever that it is?" Before your programming, your codependent programming goes, "Yep, I'll do it. Da da da, I'll do it. I can do it." Before your codependency programming has a chance to speak on your behalf, tell them, "You know what? I'm going to meditate on that. I'm going to marinate on that. I'm going to get back to you in 24 hours. I'll let you know if I can take that on. I'll let you know if that's something I want to commit to. I'll let you know if that's something that I want to do." When somebody brings to you a conversation and they want you to drop everything that's going on with you, you're in the middle of 50,000 things. And that friend who acts more like a client than a friend to you calls you up and wants to talk about all their holiday problems and hijack you out of your own life when you have things to do and stuff going on. I want you to lovingly say to that friend, "This sounds like a really tough conversation. I need to make sure I have the bandwidth for it. I'm going to get back to you when I'm available and prepared to sit with you." And I have to tell you, I'm not sure when that will be. So I recommend, I'll say, hey, reaching out to your therapist, reaching out to some other people. And part of you, when you start saying no, and what I'm talking about is not like no, just say no. I want you to drum up your sacred no. I want you to start to think about some things that you've been saying yes to as a people pleaser, that you can drum up a sacred no. And how do you get to the place that's a sacred no? You sit with it for a minute. Like the Taoists have said, everything will become clear. Are you patient enough? There's a passage in the Tao that says, "Are you patient enough to sit with the water? Let all the mud settle to the bottom so that the clarity arises by itself." Right now, people throw things at you and it's like this pond, and they just stir it up and you can't see to the bottom. You can't see clearly what you really want, what you really need, because people are pouring more shit into your pond and they're pouring more, responsibilities and things. And you need to sit with yourself long enough to let the mud settle to the bottom so that you can see clearly. Don't be afraid that people are going to take their love away when you start saying no and you stop pleasing so much everybody else. Because I'm here to tell you, the people that take their love away never had it to give to you in the first place. That was a transactional relationship. And you're going to start to see when you stop pleasing everybody else just how many transactional relationships you have. And transactional relationships are very different than mutually beneficial relationships. Mutually beneficial relationships are I pour into you and you pour into me, and we all have a part in our life, like the bees and the flowers and the wind and the rain and the trees and everything, the sun and the moon, and everything has a purpose and a gift to bring to one another. But transactional means I'm only in this when you're bringing this to me. And very rarely is there an exchange. It's a transaction. I give you my time and attention, and there's nothing in return. I give you my energy, and there's nothing in return. And that's not how we're meant to be. The universe, we are meant to follow the universe. We're a reflection of the universe. And the universe shows us interdependence, that we're all, so if it's out of balance, that's not healthy. That's dysfunctional. That's codependent. Now, there are lots of other ways codependency shows up besides people pleasing. There are 8 patterns that I've come up with that where it shows up, 8 different ways. People pleasing is one of them. Fixing is another dynamic we need to break free from. Feeling the need to fix everything, fix everyone all the time, acting as the therapist. I talked a little bit about that. Another pattern is feeling like you need to control everything all the time and everybody all the time. And you can't let your hair down. You can't relax. You can't be in the flow. These are all patterns and ways of being that developed early in our developmental stages. And just to quickly explain that is that when you're born in a dependency phase and you get all your needs met, you naturally move into a phase of independence. And in that phase of independence, you learn how to count on yourself and ruffle feathers and be who you are and claim your voice. But if any of those phases go awry, whether you didn't get the message in dependence that you could count on people, so you learned you can't trust people, or you got the memo in independence that you can't trust yourself, or you're not able to speak your mind, or bad things happen when you do that. You go skirt, skirt. You take a pit stop into codependency. Now, if you want to see what pattern you're running, if what codependent pattern you're running, attachment pattern, I've created a test for you. I'm the inventor of these 8 patterns. And what I've done is create a personality and attachment, codependent attachment personality test. And you can go over to Heidi Rain, RAIN.com, and take the test and see what pattern are you running. All these patterns have a price. There's also a book that you can download that I've written that gives the 5 criteria for each of these codependent patterns. Let this be a new year of you breaking free. What if this year coming up was the year that you resolved to resurrect your authentic self, to unearth her or him, to birth the version of you you've always been meant to be before you got the memo that other people's happiness was more important than your own, and you needed to sacrifice in order to do that. You needed to sacrifice it. And Jesus didn't come to sacrifice. And so Jesus came to teach lessons, and people didn't like those lessons and they killed him for it. Okay. He paid a big dear price. And today, the good news is that you're not going to pay that kind of price, but you will have deaths. You will have deaths of relationships, metaphorical deaths. Jesus gave his life, but what will happen for you when you start to call away these codependent relationships is there will be relationship deaths. There will be severances of relationships that you see were one-sided, not mutually beneficial, were transactional, and you were underpaid. Okay, you're going to see that. But the willingness to be able to start this work of codependency recovery and toxic relationship recovery and breaking free from these patterns and understanding how these patterns developed in you and what to do to break free from them it's the path to take to start to have the rest of your life be a brilliant reflection of your authenticity, your divinity, what you came to this planet to do, and who you came to be, and the experiences you came to have. And if your life is not filled with those, I'm talking to you that it's time for you to start the healing path so that you can be who you were born to be. Now, if you're ready to do that work, I encourage you to go over to HeidiRain.com. I have a lot of self-study courses to get started. All you need is a journal and a computer or a phone that you can watch and listen to the lessons and start to unpack your authentic self, start to unearth her, find her, free her, be her, start to unearth her from the burial that she's been buried under of responsibilities, lies, beliefs that just aren't true. That course, if you want to look at it, is over at Heidi Rain, RAIN.com, and it's called Toxic Relationship and Codependency Recovery First. All right. I love you. I hope this has been helpful for you. And if it has, will you tell me? Will you leave a comment? Will you share? Will you tell other people? And I'm going to go. I wore my cape dress for you today. Do you see this little cape dress? Because this is how I wanted to express myself today. Is it a Tuesday? Yeah. Am I filming this at a Tuesday at 9:14 a.m. with pearls and a cape? Yeah, I am. But you know what's really cool about that? Is I feel freaking amazing doing it, no matter what the outcome is. Because I'm just showing up and saying what I feel needs to be said and sharing what I need to be said, what needs to be said without the wonder if it's going to please. But if it has and it has landed and resonated, then good. And if not, go find another video. There's 1,000 here. All right. I love you. Have an excellent day. And I'll see you very, very soon. Bye bye, friend.